God says that it is difficult for those who believe in the formless aspect of God or the unmanifest aspect of God, because it is easier to be in synchronization with the creation around us. Because for us at present, this world is real, the human beings and our sadhana, everything is so real that it is difficult to even conceive of a formless God or think of something which is unmanifest. We are seeing, we are living, we are used to the world created, or you may say, which is a projection. In Vedanta, they don't say creation. Creation is a typically it's used. It's a concept in the Semitic religions that God created this world, whereas according to Advaita, it is just a projection. And or you may say it's a manifestation. So the supreme reality manifests itself. The creator himself becomes the creation, and he is immanent in his creation. That's one unique concept which Vedanta believes in. And Sri Krishna, though he says both are definitely different aspects of the reality, to put it in Sri Ramakrishna's words, Shiva and Shakti, Brahman and Maya, or Brahman and the Shakti, they are one and the same, to the obverse and reverse of the same coin. So, and he gave a beautiful example which makes us it makes us easy to understand. It becomes easy to understand when he says that suppose you take up a snake, take a snake. When it is motionless, you can compare it to Brahman. And when it starts moving, the same Brahman becomes active or creative. So the creative aspect of Brahman or Purusha, of course, Sankhyas, they believe that they are two different entities altogether. They have nothing in common. Purusha is separate, Prakriti is separate, and it is the Viyoga. In fact, yoga has been defined as the Viyoga. Viyoga means separation of Purusha from Prakriti. But that is Sankhya view. Vedanta believes, especially the Vedanta which believes in a creator, a preserver, and a destroyer. The three aspects. And we saw all those three aspects in the 10th and 11th chapter when Arjuna wanted a glimpse of what Ishvara is, what his powers are. So he shows him briefly, not all the aspects of created reality, but he shows some aspects. And Arjuna requests him to, though he was very keen to have the Vishwarupa Darshana, the universal form, but when he sees that form, Arjuna is terrified, especially when he sees the destructive form of the Lord, because there cannot be creation without destruction. So creation presupposes that there was some destruction and it has again manifested itself as a new creation. So the idea of pralaya, or the idea of total annihilation of the gross universe, going back into its causal form and then again manifesting itself, that cyclical process is what Vedanta proposes. But though the unmanifest aspect is very attractive to many people, Sri Krishna warns Arjuna that no doubt there are two aspects of reality. One is the Advaitic aspect, where there is only the supreme Brahman, pure consciousness without any manifestation. And there is this manifested universe. But he says for people who still have some attachment, or you may say the embodied person, the person who is attached to form, attached to the physical form, the subtle form. There are so many forms, as we see in a jiva. He considers himself as a body first, then maybe at a higher level he considers himself to be a mind, then buddhi, and progressively when he identifies his self with these different higher koshas, he goes slowly towards that unmanifest form or the pure consciousness which has not manifested itself. But according to Krishna, now he's warning him in the fifth verse. He says, greater is the difficulty for those whose minds are set on the unmanifest, avyakta. Avyakta means that which is not, vyakta means that which is manifest. So the unmanifest form of the Lord, though it is true that there is an unmanifest form on which many people can meditate, but it's extremely difficult for those who have this body consciousness. For an embodied person, at least some idea that one is not the body, even if one has a body, the changes that take place in the body, like extreme pain, extreme pleasure, and there are many aspects of the physical universe which have to be ignored by the force of the mind. You have to establish or you have to emphasize the subtle consciousness or the consciousness, which is our ultimate reality, and constantly or consistently deny the physical universe, the created universe, no matter how painful or how joyful it is. You have to give it up. So it is very difficult for very hard for an embodied person who is one with creation and who wants to enjoy creation as a leela of the Lord. For such people, bhakti is better. So he's coming to that. The worship of the Saguna Brahman, that is Brahman with qualities like compassion, because we feel them. They are absolutely real for us. We can superimpose those qualities on God. Though we see them in human beings, qualities like compassion, it's only a God with form which can have compassion. If you consider God to be formless, then where is the guna of compassion or cruelty or any other quality you cannot attribute to him? You have to deny everything. So he who adores Nirguna Brahman, Nirguna means, guna means quality. Nirguna Brahman means aspiring for a formless and qualityless reality. Is not only without form, is without any quality. So it has to be, and such people, Krishna says, have to they have to be free from the feeling that they are the body right from the beginning. No doubt, when they are doing sadhana, these Advaitins, the idea of body it pops up. Then you have to forcibly deny. If there is pain, you have to deny that there is pain. All the emotions and the feelings associated with the identification of the jiva with the body have to be given up right from the beginning. So that makes it very difficult that here is our body, here are our feelings. How can you say they don't exist? It takes a very, very strong mind, one whose buddhi or has been developed to such an extent that he can even in the midst of pain, like Sri Ramakrishna used to do. He used to say, when somebody said, you are having this terrible pain of cancer in your throat, he says, yeah, the pain and the body, they know, the body knows the pain and body can deal with the pain, but I am in joy. That means his mind could be separated. He had learned the technique of separating the mind from the body, which is what Sri Krishna is saying, that this feeling of body, to disassociate yourself from the body and prana, the lower gross body, is necessary right from the beginning of sadhana. Whenever the body idea pops up, you have to deny it. So there is an absolute denial right from the beginning. For a spiritually advanced soul, it is possible, but for ordinary sadhaka who still has not got rid of this body feeling, the worship of God with form, that is the path of bhakti, is more natural. That is why Sri Ramakrishna used to say in the gospel that in Kali Yuga especially, he says annagata prana, means the body and the prana are dependent on food. By food he means the gross inputs that we have. So we are so much dependent on that, that no matter how high our ideals are, it is easier to approach God with form through bhakti than to deny it outright. It is possible. The Jnani, the realized soul, can say, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, and deny any idea that is uh, suggested to the jiva. He has to constantly deny. He has to constantly deny pain. He has to constantly deny that he has anything to do. Constantly denies attachment to anything in the world. So, Sri Ramakrishna says in the gospel, but the body-bound man, one who is embodied, should not say that he is Brahman. That is why the Brahmos, when they were praying, Sri Ramakrishna was once invited. And that's a famous incident. Sri Ramakrishna was so outspoken. He knew that these Brahmos, most of them were householders, because there's no necessity to become a monastic or to give up any kind of householder's life in the Brahmo Samaj. So they could be preachers, they could be teachers, even without having had to renounce the world. So they were all sitting, and but one thing they followed, maybe they borrowed it from Islam, that at least women were not allowed to sit with the men. So they, that kind of discrimination were there. They used to sit behind screens which were in the balcony. So it's a typical church-like setting where prayer would be there, but only men folk would sit. Though their wives would, and other members of the women members of the family, they would be sitting behind those curtain, and they could watch from above, but they were not seen. So Sri Ramakrishna was invited to one such meeting, and he respected everyone, including the Brahmos. But sometimes he would not hesitate to criticize them. So they were singing a song where they were glorifying the formless God. Brahmos did not believe in a God with form. They did not believe in bhakti of uh, the kind that Vedanta advocates, or the bhakti school of Vedanta advocates. They were very critical of people going to temples and worshipping images, murti puja, many things. And they claimed that they worshipped a formless God, though they believed that God has some qualities. So Sri Ramakrishna once said, how can a person without form have compassion? It's only a human being, or a human being who is elevated to the status of a God, who can have compassion. How can just pure Brahman consciousness can he have? If he's Nirakara, he cannot be Saguna. Anyway, they followed the middle path, because there are many. They wanted to somehow emphasize that we have to worship the formless God. So they used to sing Brahma. Brahma itself means they are worshippers of Brahman, the highest form of reality. And they used to sing songs, and many times the songs would mean that we are not, we have nothing to do this world. We are that supreme consciousness, the pure consciousness. Chid Ghana means consciousness that has uh, become condensed, or maybe personified as the world, the creation. They accepted creation, they accepted the beauty behind creation. And there are many such songs. Most of these songs found their expression in Tagore's songs later on, because Tagore himself was a Brahmo. So there was nothing wrong in that, Sri Ramakrishna said. But then here, when they were singing one such song, Sri Ramakrishna saw the hypocrisy. And then he said, jokingly, of course, he never could criticize anyone, but he made some fun. He says, you are all speaking that we have no family, no, we are free, we are uh, not attached to anything. Then what will happen to your wives who are sitting there? They're behind the screen. Oder ki hobe, mane, what will happen to them? So he used to say that it is harmful for such people who still have faith in creation, the creator, and believe in the embodied form, to say that I am Brahman. So he had, just as Sri Krishna did in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 5th verse, he says, because it is difficult, because we cannot do it, uh, Sri Ramakrishna says it is harmful to say that I am Brahman, when actually he feels that he is the body. He deceives himself and the world by such a statement. One typical example was Hazra. Sri Ramakrishna told him many times, you have married, you have children, and you have left them, and they are looked after by your father-in-law. Is it good? You have certain responsibilities, and you come and pretend that you are an Advaitin sitting outside the door of Sri Ramakrishna's room. He used to misguide people, saying that he preaches bhakti, whereas Advaita is the only reality. Sri Ramakrishna sometimes got upset with him. He said, how do you say that? You have a duty towards you are married, you have children, and now you expect your father-in-law to look after them. What kind of vairagya is this? So that's why Sri Ramakrishna says he deceives himself and the world by such a statement. So he should rather follow the path of least resistance, which in this case is bhakti. So how should a sadhaka, how should such a person who accepts or acknowledges that he is an embodied being proceed and aspire to reach that same formless Brahman through the path of bhakti, through the worship of Ishvara? Because you saw in the 10th and 11th chapter, slowly Sri Krishna is preparing the ground for Arjuna to understand. First, he explains in the Vishwarupa Darshana or maybe in Vibhuti Yoga by showing some aspects of God, of Ishvara. And he's not satisfied. He wants a direct experience of Ishvara. So he says, okay, I bestow a special grace upon you. Normally, people cannot see my universal form, the Vishwarupa, but I would show it to you. And then he shows it. And then he asks him to withdraw it because it is too much for him. But still, he tells him in the 12th chapter, he's prepared the ground and he says, I'll show you an easy way through Bhakti Yoga to worship the same Ishvara. Through devotion, you can reach the same goal as the Advaitins or the monists, those who believe in the formless God, reach reality. So it's that not that the goal is different, but the path is different. So 6th to 12th verse, the first 5 verses we discussed, 6th to 12th verse is a description of how to approach. When we worship a Saguna Brahman, that is even when we worship an incarnation, which is Saguna Brahman itself, we have to consider him to be the absolute Satchidananda Brahman, but in a form which we would like to see him or worship him. So in that also, there are certain steps, certain stages. And verse number 6 to 12, they cover all the different aspects of Ishvara, most of the aspects, not all. There's no end to the different aspects. But he gives a pretty good hint. And he shows Arjuna the way, how you can approach reality or the Supreme Brahman, the Nirguna Brahman, by worshipping the Saguna Brahman in such a way that finally you attain that same goal. So worship of Saguna Brahman from verse 6 to 12, the 6th verse is the first verse. He says, though it is difficult to worship the formless God for those who have strong attachment to the body, who are embodied beings, and they still feel that they have to, they're not strong enough to deny the existence of the body and all the creation around them. So for them, he says, Yetu sarvani karmani mai sanyasya matpara. First, he starts with a very simple step, which is the first step of Bhakti Yoga. He says, yetu means those people, those who, sarvani karmani, all the work that a person does in this embodied world, with embodied beings, with gross objects, with a world which is as real as the supreme reality, the Vyakta Brahman, which is the same as Avyakta Brahman in a different form. So, the worship of Saguna Brahman, the first step is Yetu Sarvani Karmani Mahi Sanyasya Matparaha Ananye Naiva Yogena Mam Dhyayanta Upasate. So, the first thing such a bhakta or a sadhaka who is on the path of bhakti yoga, he has to understand that the Supreme Lord or Ishvara is the only, he has to meditate on him. How? Those who worship me, renouncing all actions in me. Now, this is the essence of Karma Yoga, which Sri Krishna had discussed to some extent in the third chapter and the fourth chapter, which is actually Karma Yoga. After the second chapter, he discussed this, but here it is with an attitude of bhakti that he is uh, the worship of Saguna Brahman through our actions, by dedicating our actions to him. Whatever we do, Sarvani Karmani. It's not that you dedicate certain actions like puja, like rituals to him. Every action that you do, every moment of yours should be renounced in, how to renounce in me. So it's a very important aspect, a difficult concept to understand. What do you renounce? If you're doing the actions, you're not renouncing the action. But he still says, in me you renounce those actions. Means you consider that these actions, though they are done by you, you try to give that agency to me. And how do you do it? Because you know that he is an antaryami. That will come in the next verse. It will further explain. Sri Krishna doesn't leave it unexplained. He will try to explain how to do it, how to renounce all your karmas in that Ishvara or in that Ishta or in that God whom you are worshipping. How to renounce it. We are doing it. Renounce. For a Jnani, the renouncing of actions literally means renouncing physically, if possible, most of the actions, and the bare minimum like breathing, like survival. But that is a very difficult path. You can't just renounce. So if you can't do that, you renounce those actions into me. Or in the Jnani's case, he can do all the actions, but he has to do it without any agency. That there should not be any ego. If there is no ego, then you cannot complain that there is pain. You cannot complain that you are seeking pleasure. It's Jnani is a totally neutral or a sthita prajna, which was discussed in the second chapter. But if you cannot do it, at least you can start moving towards that state of sthita prajna by renouncing all actions in me. That means renouncing your ego, that kartrutva, that doership. I am doing it right now. I have a feeling that ego is very strong, that I am doing this, I am doing that. But if you allow the Lord to do it, and that means you are renouncing all his actions, all the actions that you do in me. And how do you do it? By regarding me as the supreme goal. Mat paraha. Mat para sanyasya. And having renounced that, mat paraha, regarding me as the supreme Ishvara, ananyena means without any without any diversion or being single-minded. Ananya man means single-minded devotion. Eva yogena, with the yoga or meditation, or you may say a sort of bhakti which is continuous, which is not broken. Ananya means single-minded. Meditating regarding me as the supreme goal, you renounce all actions into me. Sanyasta. It's not that you renounce those actions, but dedicate all those actions, attribute the fruits of those actions to the Lord. So you don't take any responsibility. There's no doership. You just say these are your, it's your karma that I am, it's all these actions are dedicated to you. So dedicated to whom? By considering the Lord as the supreme goal, not just to any human being or any cause. Many people do a lot of good work for a higher cause. But if you dedicate it to the Lord, then even the most trivial of all actions, the routine actions that you do, they convert that action into karma yoga, and then that helps you to meditate. He says, meditating on me with single-minded yoga. So both have to be combined. When you have single-minded devotion, and that devotion is applied to your karma yoga or to your karma, Sarvani karmani. So whether you eat, whether you drink, whatever you do in and through the Lord. That is the idea. Now, now comes what happens if you do all your work like that. If you are not, if you are dedicating all your actions and not taking the responsibility of your actions, then you may say, if I don't take, if I work without any desire for fruit, then what will happen to me? What exactly will I gain if I dedicate everything to the Lord? There are many actions which I need to do to sustain myself. So, who will take care of me? Uh, will it be some kind of work where there is absolutely no motive, which is so difficult? So he says, what will happen if you do the work as described in chapter in verse 5? He says, Tesham aham samudharta mrityu sansara sagarat bhavami nachirat partha maya veshita chetasam. Means, what actually happens is, why should one do this work? Because they will be what, if somebody does that, for those who are able to dedicate all actions unto me and who consider me to be the supreme goal. By considering me means the Ishta, whom you can consider as an Antaryami, who is the inner controller seated within the heart, and to whom and through whose agency you are doing the work. If you do that, I become very soon the deliverer, that is Tesham, to those people by constantly practicing this karma yoga, by dedicating the fruits of all actions. I take their responsibility and deliver them from the ocean of mortal samsara, mrityu sansara sagarat. So it's the sansara is considered to be a sagara, an ocean, in which inevitably someday or the other we are going to drown if we our boats and if we don't know how to swim or how long can we swim. So ultimately ocean is a place where you can't survive without somebody rescuing you from there. So it's given as an example. The sagara is used, not a pond is used, because in pond you can come out. Whereas if you are in the midst of an ocean, you need some supernatural power to rescue you. That's why this example is given. This is a very famous example given in Vedanta, Mrityu Sansara Sagarat. So Sansar is compared to a sagar, where there is no other way of escape unless somebody rescues you. And he who rescues you is the Ishvara whom you are worshipping and dedicating your actions. O Partha. Partha is Arjuna's name. So I am the deliverer. I become. In that case, when you dedicate all these actions and dedicate your life for me, then it is my responsibility to rescue you. Tesham, aham, samudharta. I become the savior. So he's a savior of whom? Of those who really want to be saved. If I don't want, then he will allow us. It is for us to decide whether we want him to be our savior. So that's why he's saying only to those people. He says, Maya Vishita Chetasam. And there's another condition he says, for those whose thought is set on me. So whether it is through actions, whether it is through meditation, whether it is through japa, repeating his name, somehow that feeling of presence of the Lord within me, or always remaining connected to him, those whose thought is set. So that's a beautiful word. Mahi means in the Lord. Aveshita chetasam, whose minds, like the magnet, Sri Ramakrishna used to give that example. A magnet may be moved, but finally it finds its north-south axis. No doubt, even if you move that magnet, it will automatically go and settle down. So also he said the minds may wander a little bit here and there, but ultimately it should settle down and focus on the Lord. So that is what is known as Mai Aveshita Chetasam. Those whose minds are set, they're set like the magnetic needle. They may move here and there, but finally they settle down. They come back to the original position. They point and they are set on me. Me means the Lord. In that case, I take the responsibility and lift them from the ocean of samsara. So an ignorant man, now the example is given. Suppose the person doesn't do this, what happens to him? So he segregates from the whole. He considers himself, because of his ego, because of his greed, he wants to fight the whole world, he wants to dominate, he wants to succeed, and he tries very hard. So, but that also is a sport of the Lord, because as Sri Ramakrishna so beautifully explained in the gospel, you see, in the gospel it becomes very easy that why does not God motivate all of us to worship Him, to fix our mind in Him? Because He loves the play. Sri Ramakrishna used to explain beautifully by saying that the mother does not come to the child. If the child is busy with toys, she allows the child to play. She doesn't unnecessarily interfere. So also, suppose somebody is floating on the ocean of samsara and he wants to enjoy his ride, he is welcome to do it. But it is in his own interest to ensure that in case there is a storm, in case there are problems, there's somebody who will rescue him from the mid-ocean. That's the idea. So, it's a sport, no doubt. The other people who do not have their mind set on the Ishvara, they also survive. They also survive the waves, ups and downs of life. They somehow struggle. But still they survive because it's a sport of this Ishvara. He says, he gains in Shreyas by worshipping me constantly, by dedicating slowly, not like the Gyani who right from beginning is attuned to the formless God. What he does is though he considers this to be a sport of the Lord, so he plays it. Now and then he forgets to dedicate the fruits, forgets to focus his mind on the Lord. And then but at the same time, he is following the path of Shreyas, not Prayas. Prayas means you go towards the world. But here he is going towards the Lord, though he is not fully devoted. He still enjoys the play, but at the same time, he is following the path of prayers. So that's why in the Kathopanishad, Yama tells Nachiketa, there is one path which is uh, known as Shreyas and another is known as Prayas. Prayas means that which looks pleasurable, which makes you feel that uh, there is a lot of enjoyment in this world. There's nothing wrong. But when you are in trouble and when things do not last, when things change, when the waves uh, torment you, then there is a problem. Whereas Shreyas is a path where no doubt you are enjoying the play, not that you are totally given up, not that the child is crying uh, to the mother all the time. Obviously, no mother would like the child to always cry, but there are certain times when the child feels hungry, like a spiritual aspirant. He says, I have played enough with these toys, now you uh, take me. But all the time, you should remember that the child is aware that if something goes wrong, my mother is there to pick me up. With that faith, with that conviction, with that devotion, that under any circumstance, my mother is going to rescue me. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna used to say that worshipping God as the mother has its advantages. He said that is the purest of all relationships with God, because that allows you, because the mother knows that after all, I have put him. There are so many songs of Ram Prasad and all the people who can worship God, the Divine Mother. They say that you have uh, made us play with these toys. It is your own wish. So now they are complaining to the mother. They said, you have made us forget you. So it is you who have to remind us and help us to overcome this. That sentiment is uh, expressed here. So that bhakti, it will not directly take you to that ultimate reality or Ishvara. He will allow the sport to go on till you realize that till you have that Ananya Bhakti, that is Ananya Chetasam, till you reach a stage through your bhakti, very slowly, it may be a time consuming process. But for such people, Sri Ramakrishna says, no, for certain, he calls it Para Bhakti or Prema Bhakti. So the other bhakti is just, I will remember you whenever I am in trouble. That is another bhakti. Sri Ramakrishna doesn't say it's an inferior type of bhakti, but it is takes you towards, because you remember him at least now and then. Though you may not remember the Lord only when there is trouble. So that is not para bhakti. But if you are somehow convinced to remember him all the time, then definitely he'll come and deliver you. So that's the idea. So uh, he says, but even if you see, that's the greatness of this path of bhakti, which Sri Ramakrishna used to emphasize, is very important in Kali Yuga. He says, at least if you make an attempt to worship the Lord now and then, though your mind may not be fully engaged in the service of the Lord or in worshipping Him or focused on Him, even that will take you on the path of Shreyas, and it will certainly result in union with that Ishvara. So how should that embodied one, if one accepts that, see, I can't get rid of this ego and the idea that I am a body with my intermediate goals in life. So I have to prepare myself. I want that I should be fully devoted and follow a fully 100% spiritual life, a path of Shreyas. But then how to prepare oneself? So now the question, anticipating this question, Krishna is telling Arjuna how to do it. So now he gives the way. First he says, what happens if you focus your mind entirely on me? But if you can't do that, you do the next best thing. Mayeva mana adhaswam Mayi buddhim niveshaya nivashishyasi mayeva atha urdhvam na sanshaya. It may take time. Mayi eva manaha adhatsva. Adhatsva means fix. Try to fix my mind on me alone without any diversion. Of course, it has to be done now and then. Obviously, he doesn't expect the mind to be always focused on the Lord. Mayi buddhim, not only fix your manas, the mind. You see, very clearly we discussed in the Vedanta class that there are two aspects of the mind. One is mana and another is buddhi. So here you see that distinction is very clearly, that distinction is clearly expressed here. First he says, Mai eva, mean in me alone fix your mind. That is a preliminary sadhaka. So our mind is always restless, it is reactive. So somehow, in the midst of all the, you may say, the restlessness of the mind, now and then try to focus the mind on me. It will not be possible to fix it on the Lord with your whole mind. But again he says, with your buddhi, Mayi buddhim niveshaya. Now, here comes a very important point. Why is he making that distinction? He could have simply said, place your buddhi or focus your buddhi on me. He doesn't say that because he knows many of the sadhakas are yet to reach a level where they can distinguish between this mind, though they have buddhi to some extent. Otherwise, they would not have taken the decision to become spiritual. So, as they say, first stage is train the mind in such a way that the buddhi is awakened. When the buddhi is awakened, that buddhi, which is a higher aspect of the mind, it becomes more easy. If you constantly focus the mind on me, Mayi eva mana adatsva, that is the first stage. Then he says, Mayi buddhim niveshaya. After having gathered the mind, that is pratyahara. So, in Patanjali, there are two different stages. One is gather all your mind from different objects and then focus it on the Lord. You may do it once, twice, thrice, maybe 4 times a minute or 4 times an hour, you remember the Lord. Then you forget. Then you again place it back. So that is the first part of the verse, that Mai eva mana adatsa. So fix the mind on me. As you go on doing it, he said, then Mai buddhim niveshaya. Then what happens if you do that? After that, it becomes very natural. So there is a constant undercurrent. You don't have to struggle. Pratyahara, then we have dharana, and then dhyana. Dharana and dhyana is the next step. Dharana means the mind is focused now on the Lord. Whereas in pratyahara, you are again and again trying to place the restless mind and focus it on the Lord. It goes away, then again you place it with lot of persistence. But when it reaches the state of buddhi, and you do this, then you fix that buddhi also on the Lord. You fix Mai buddhyam niveshaya. He doesn't say fix, he says just place it there. Once the buddhi is awakened, once the manas is refined to such an extent you will reach the level of buddhi, then you place it. You place it in the sense, that is why they say you first meditate. Pranava leads to Vedas. The essence of the Vedas is in the Pranava. The Pranava leads to repetition of the Pranava leads to the awakening of the Buddhi. And when the Buddhi is awakened, you place it, dedicate it to the Lord. That is what he's saying. You place him in such a way that he finds a resting place. Before that, you have to make an effort. The mind is so restless that you are just able to fix it for some time, it goes away. Then when you are able to fix it for a longer time, as in dharana of Patanjali's yoga, then you come to dhyana. So that is when real meditation takes place, when your buddhi has been awakened. Before that, it is just a struggle to refine the mind and reach the level of buddhi. That is what Gayatri Mantra is supposed to do. Dhiyo yona prachodayata. So people right from childhood are encouraged to repeat the Gayatri so that their buddhi is awakened. And that buddhi, if you place it on me, that is the path of bhakti. Nivashishyasi. Nivasishyasi means you shall live or you shall stay there in me alone hereafter, and do not doubt. So I am not going to abandon you. If you place your buddhi in me, then you should not doubt. You will hereafter, means after placing, after reaching the level of buddhi, when you focus on me, I take all the responsibility, not only rescue from the sansar sagara, but also you will live in me eternally, and don't have any doubt. So this to feel in this particular verse, if you see, there are two stages. So first is the way of the mind, and the second is the way of the buddhi or intellect. So there are these subtle organs inside. With subtle organs in the sense, when you close our eyes, as I said, we go from that waking world of objects. Even when we close our eyes or are dreaming something, a new dream world opens. And that dream world, in that dream world, there are dream objects, there is a dream ego, there are so many things. Those are activated by our subtle organs. That shows, that is the reason why we say there is a subtle body. So when you go from waking state to dream, sleep with the dreaming state, not dreamless sleep, sleep with in a dream state, your organs are still active. It's only when you go into deep sleep, the subtle organs. So he's talking of, if you cultivate that placing the mind, that is fixing your mind on me alone in your waking state, then your buddhi also, the buddhi which is more subtle, you don't have to struggle. So it is absorbed by the Lord, who is the goal of our life. If he is in the heart, you realize that buddhi within, which is like a light. Dhiyo yona prachodayata means that light of illumination, which is there behind the sun. Sun, just as the sun illuminates everything, Let my buddhi illumine the whole world around me, and let me see things in a proper perspective. Let me make the right choices in life. So that is the role of buddhi. Now, when that buddhi is awakened, that's the intermediate state. By fixing the mind on me or on the Lord, he says you will attain to that buddhi. And when you place that buddhi, then you are safe. Because after reaching that state, and once you place your buddhi, you have taken the right decision, the most best choice that you can take, or best decision you can take in life. So you've chosen Shreya, not Preya. And this mind itself is tainted, or not tainted, is colored by the divine within. It is that is what Sri Krishna means when he says, "My presence you will feel all the time." There's like an undercurrent that whatever happens to me, it is the Lord who is doing this. So Sri Krishna, he says about this struggle. So he gives a beautiful example in the Kathamrita, the Gospel of Sri Krishna. He says, in a beautiful, which is somewhat similar, he says, man is born with two tendencies. One is Vidya Guna and Avidya Guna. That is, one which leads to prayas, which is Avidya Guna, the noble, which is Vidya Guna, and the lower Guna, which is the base, which is dormant in him. So it takes more effort to cultivate Vidya Guna. Avidya Guna is part of our ignorance. The avidya is very natural to a human being. So we are born with avidya. It takes an effort. It's like going downhill. Whereas to go uphill, you have to struggle. So vidya guna and avidya guna, the noble and the base, are always dormant in a human being. Not that everybody is full of vidya guna, or there will be some avidya guna, and it will never be that somebody is full of only avidya guna. He has the germ or the some kind of vidya guna inherent in him. So the former, that is the vidya guna, leads him towards Godward, the path of Shreyas, and the latter, the second guna, makes him earthbound, makes him more worldly. In babyhood, this is Sri Krishna's words, I'm just quoting from the Gospel. When a child is born, both the tendencies, according to him, are as it were in an equilibrium. Of course, all are not manifest. As I told you, according to Patanjali, the child shows that he is full of noble qualities, and then there are avidya guna also in the child, which drags him down. But more or less, they are in equilibrium. He is ready now to be molded whichever way we want. So Sri Krishna says, like, it is like two scales of a balance. You see, when a child is born, he is born with at least the qualities of Vidya Guna and Avidya Guna are equally balanced. If he grows in life in the senses, the scale of worldliness goes down with that weight. So it is for people who are responsible for his upbringing, plus his own sanskaras of past life, which will decide what will predominate. Will Shreya predominate or Preya predominate? So, if he emerges in spirituality, if he chooses the second path according to the Gita, which is following the Shreyas, the path of bhakti, the scale in him of godliness goes down, or it goes down in favor of Ishvara with the holy weight. So that is what Sri Krishna says, which is similar to what Sri Krishna says. He has to first place his mind in him, in the Ishvara, then the buddhi also, Mahi buddhi niveshaya. Now, what has that sadhaka, the same aspirant, if suppose his mind is not steady, he is not even able to fulfill the first part of the earlier verse, that place the mind in me. He says placing the buddhi is a later stage. That we'll discuss later, but Arjuna seems to be, or maybe Krishna seems to be anticipating this question from Arjuna, that you see, I can't even place my mind, forget the buddhi. I don't even know what that buddhi is. So what has the sadhaka to do in that case? So, whose mind is not staunch, who is not steady in his pursuit of God or focusing his mind on God, then he gives an answer as it where he was anticipating that Sri Krishna Arjuna is going to complain that you are talking of placing the buddhi. I know if I place my buddhi, then there will be no worries. But I can't even place the mind. The first part of your verse of this Bhagavad Gita, the sixth verse, I'm not able to fulfill. So tell me something lower, more simpler than what you are saying. So then he says, immediately he says, Atha chittam samadhatum. Chittam means that is the higher buddhi. Atha chittam samadhatum na shaknoshi mai sthiram. If your buddhi is not steady enough to focus on me, atha chittam, if that mind, that is the mind has not become a buddhi, and you are not able to fix na shaknoshi mai in me sthiram. Abhyasa yogena, abhyasa yogena tatah mamit chaptum dhananjaya. So you can still aspire. You can still aspire. Take it for granted that you are not able to reach that state of buddhi at present. But by abhyasa yoga. So what this abhyasa yoga will explain, he says Dhananjaya, and is reminding him that you are a Dhananjaya. You see, all these adjectives given to Arjuna are have a particular significance. Sometimes he calls him Partha, sometimes Dhananjaya. Deliberately he's saying this. It's not taunting him, but he's saying you might be one of the greatest warriors, you might be one of the greatest generals, but you are a pygmy, spiritual pygmy when it comes to focus the mind. Not only focus the mind, he may be extremely concentrated when he is dealing with archery and all those things. We know that famous incident when Dronacharya was teaching the students. He was the one who had the highest concentration, but that was external concentration. So here he is making a distinction. Just by saying Dhananjaya means one who is an expert in archery. Who is an expert in archery? Who is so focused and so successful in his profession, if you consider fighting as his profession. So we may be excellent in many, like one can be a very good surgeon, one can be very good in his profession, but that has nothing to do with this buddhi. This is making clear by saying you are a Dhananjaya. But remember, you are still not reached, you are not able to fix the mind steadily. So we may think, how can it be possible that a person who has so much of concentration, forget a restless person. Arjuna is definitely not an ordinary person. He is definitely a person who has, by his hard work, by his concentration, by his persistence, by his training, by his skills, he has attained a wonderful degree of concentration. But he still calls him Dhananjaya. He says, it seems to be a contradiction, but Sri Krishna is in a very subtle way saying, you may be one of the most successful people, one of the most successful people in the world. But when it comes to spiritual life, you are still a pygmy. That's why he says, not with a view of insulting. He loved Arjuna so much that he wanted to speak the truth to him. He said, if you are not able to fix your mind, forget the buddhi. First he says, you place the buddhi and I'll take care of everything. But then even if you are not able to fix the mind, then follow the practice of Abhyasa Yoga. So now we will describe what Abhyasa Yoga is. So wavering of the mind, Sri Krishna says, is a very natural phenomena because as I said, the child is born. Sri Ramakrishna says when a child is born, he is born with with an equal balance, equilibrium of avidya and vidya. It is only when he follows by the grace of God, by the grace of his parents, by the grace of his teachers and the world around him, and also by his own samskaras, when the child decides to follow the path of vidya, which is shreyas, the balance of godliness or concentration, the balance of yoga shifts in his favor. But if he is encouraged by his parents or encouraged by uh, the world around him, and all those who are responsible. So you can't blame the child. He comes with a equilibrium, a balance. These are Thakur's words. So he could see that when a child is born, he is totally neutral. Though he comes with a lot of samskaras, but he will gravitate, or people will make him gravitate towards one side or the other, either yoga or bhoga. So if you want, because he knows that Arjuna or Dhananjaya, because he feels that supreme confidence that I have a concentrated mind in the external world, that doesn't make you uh, concentrated in the spiritual world. You can be equally restless. So he says, use abhyasa yoga ceaselessly, because your mind is now oscillating between God and the world, your worldly success and God. So the constant practice that is required is what Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, that it requires, just as it required persistent shooting of arrows to become an archer, to become a good, become a Dhananjaya. Obviously, he must have shot so many arrows. So much of concentration was required. So also he says you have to practice that same Abhyasa Yoga. Only thing, now you have to practice it till the mind, again and again, place the mind on the Lord, till the buddhi develops. The He says by that, by Abhyasa Yoga, you can attain everything. You can change your past karma. That's why Holy Mother says that you can't change it fully, but by japa you can definitely reduce its impact. The impact of your karma doesn't make you helpless. So nature is something which can be changed by nurture. There's a nice book uh, which is written by a biologist, The Biology of Belief. In fact, that book was, uh, I got introduced to this book by one of our Dr. Swamis, who is very senior now. In fact, he's a practicer. He was practicing Islam. Even today, he is a Muslim in heart, but he has tremendous devotion to Thakur. So Swami Gangananda told me that this is because he is a doctor himself. He was an MD in his pre-monastic life, and he worked as a doctor even in our hospitals in Arogya Bhavan in Belur Math. So he told me that he read this book by, it's the name of the book is Biology of Belief. The Biology of Belief, where without even referring to Vedanta, because the person who wrote that book, I forgot the name. What is this? Bruce Lipton. Bruce Lipton is the name. He is a biologist with a difference. He made a lot of study of what is more important, nature or nurture. By nature or nurture, what it means is the genetic quality of a human being. When he is born, because science believes that he is born with certain genes and he will behave in a particular way, which he doesn't agree. He says both are equally responsible. Environment is equally responsible. So nurture can change nature. So Abhyasa Yoga is like nurturing. You are nurturing some inherent inability, inherent restlessness. So mother says you might have come with a load of bad karma, and then you keep on complaining that why these things are happening in my life, why my life, and you blame God for that. He says no, but there is a thing known as nurture. Nature may be your nature, or you may say destiny. By nature here means destiny. You're born with certain characteristics. He says even biologically, though the scientific community does not fully agree with him, that is why, though he is considered to be one of a very accomplished biologist, genetic scientist, he became very unpopular because he speaks something similar to what Sri Ramakrishna speaks. Though he has not read Vedanta, nor has he read, he is arriving it on the basis of this research that he did. He said, I've seen the environment changes the genes, changes the very nature of the genes. So nurture can change one's nature. That is a great discovery which Vedanta made, that you don't have to be helpless, but then you have to do Abhyasa Yoga. So that is what he's telling Arjuna. First, he's saying that your concentration, your level of buddhi that you have reached using your skills in the outer world does not automatically make you an expert in concentrating in the internal world. It does not make you fit. Otherwise, why would Arjuna ask this question that his mind is restless? His mind is not restless when it comes to shooting arrows. He never missed his target. But at the same time, when it came to meditation, he says, I can't do. My mind is so restless. So, nature can be, one's nature, though one has come with lot of bad karma, lot of samskaras, and then you don't have to be a fatalist. Holy Mother says, if there is a sword wound, which you were destined because of your past karma, you can get away by a pinprick if you do your japa sincerely, because that is removing some, that is nurture. Abhyasa yoga means doing japa is nothing but abhyasa yoga. So, Sri Krishna, now we'll conclude. I'll conclude with this beautiful example how Abhyasa yoga is to be practiced. This is a beautiful example. I don't think there is a better example, because Sri Krishna did not believe in philosophy. He just gave simple examples from our day-to-day life. Everybody has seen how difficult it is to train one's dog, who is a pet, especially when you buy a dog, and that pet dog, till it becomes completely obedient to the master. Sri Krishna is giving that example. Obviously, he has seen. In India, though, it's not so common in those days to have pet dogs because people had hardly food to eat themselves. So maybe he's talking of some rich people who had dogs in their house and who could afford. So he says, a man was rearing a pet dog, allowing it undue indulgence. One day, I mean, as usual, you just spoil a child, by overindulging in the child's active, just pampering him. And pampering is a very bad word, but it's a very trivial word. But normally that is what happens. Here he's saying by undue indulgence. That is what pampering means. So that dog belonged to a man. He was rearing it. He was trying to discipline it, but he was not able to do it because he was showering a lot of love rather than disciplining him. One day, when he was conversing with a learned visitor, the dog, as it was his habit because he was pampered, he jumped onto the lap of its master and licked his face and started disturbing their conversation. He was talking, and in front of the guest, if somebody comes and jumps on you, so then this is no good, observed the newcomer. The newcomer was disturbed. I have come to talk to you. You can't even control this dog. The remark produced a salutary effect on the man, who decided then and there, he decided to train the dog properly. No more indulgence for this dog. Thenceforth, he gave a knock every time the dog jumped up to lick his face. Before that, he would allow, in the name of love, in the name of fondling the dog. He had made it indulgent. That undue indulgence, which was his habit. The same thing, Abhyasa Yoga, means you just slap it. He would just shout at it, and then every time he jumped, he gave it a slap or a knock, and just so after repeatedly doing that, Sri Ramakrishna says, the animal was not slow to find out, even they have intelligence, that the master did not approve of his. Earlier he approved, so he was indulging in that. But when he understood that the master is not approving, it changed its habit accordingly and then became disciplined. Similarly, he says, the unwanted desire in our mind, it may come like this dog, it is like a wretched dog that man has fondly reared for such a long time. His likes and dislikes, they are like dogs. But there is still hope, he says. It dominates over him and depraves him woefully. But only by repeated repeatedly practicing Abhyasa Yoga, giving him blows in the form of counter thoughts, positive thoughts, repeating the name of the Lord. This constant Abhyasa Yoga. So, this is such a wonderful example how to deal with a restless mind, with these thoughts which we are responsible. When the child is born, he was not born with these thoughts. It is because of our indulgence, either of the parents or of the child has unfortunately. Now, if you want to change him, just like you want to change the dog, you have to teach him, discipline that child, or in this case, it is the mind, referring to the mind, that our mind is like that dog or that child. And or the only way to rectify is it through Abhyasa Yoga. Now, next class, we will discuss. This is one way. But definitely, Sri Krishna gives multiple options. In fact, the 18 chapters and 700 verses are different options. If you can't do this, you do. He's so kind, Sri Krishna, and even after 700 verses towards the end, he says, I have told what I have told, what I had to say. Everything that I could possibly tell you, I have said. Now you decide what you should do. He doesn't even tell him you have to follow this or that. So he gives another option. He says, if somebody cannot even do this Abhyasa Yoga, he says, no, it is too much for me. I mean, I can't discipline my mind. So then he gives another option, which we will not discuss now. uh, just to give, I will repeat it in the next class. He says, even if you are not able to do this Abhyasa Yoga, if you do all the actions with the intent for my sake, that is dedicating it to the Lord, slowly, even by just performing actions and dedicate it to the Lord, you will be able to do this Abhyasa Yoga. Okay. Other questions? There's no time, no? No. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna